Coming up on the next edition of Power and Politics, Donald Trump found guilty of 34 felony counts. So how does this change his prospects going into the 2024 presidential election? And how independent voters in Florida could change the dynamic come November. Hello and welcome to another edition of Power and Politics. I'm your host, Frank Cipolla. Power and Politics is a weekly, unbiased look at the top stories affecting the state, with a special emphasis on the psychology behind the decisions and issues that affect our lives. I'm joined today by my co-host, Emmy Award-winning political psychologist, Dr. Bart Rossi. Dr.
Great to be here again, Frank.
All right, so what do you do if you're running for president and have been found guilty of 34 felony counts? In Donald Trump's case, it could end up being a plus or a minus. So this is the big story this week. How do you see this?
Well, Frank, I'd like to say something that we haven't seen on too many of the networks, okay?
Okay.
From the psychologist's point of view, suppose it was Nikki Haley who had the affair with a porn star while running for president, and she covered it up by falsifying with hundreds of thousands of dollars in her business that particular affair so she could influence the election and maybe win. What would Donald Trump say about her? Or what would happen if keeping it in the Republican Party, what would happen if it was Governor DeSantis who had this situation? What would the former president say about our good governor?
Or a Democratic candidate, for that matter.
Well, suppose it was Hillary Clinton. Mm-hmm. We know what Mr. Trump has said before. The former president has said, lock her up. Mm-hmm. That's what he said. And the truth is that he did have the affair. He covered it up with hundreds of thousands of dollars that were falsified in his business to influence the election on 34 counts. And that's what some Republicans are saying. Others are saying it was fixed. Mm-hmm. But Frank, let me ask you the question, okay, this time. How do you fix it if you don't even know who the jurors are? People who are saying that it's fixed or rigged, but they don't know who the jurors are.
We should mention that he's going to be sentenced July 11th and has promised to appeal this decision. But getting back to this for just a moment, does this change MAGA supporters of Donald Trump in any way, shape, or form?
No, but I think what they should say, it's not that significant, but it is real. I mean, it is a real offense. I mean, you can't get around it. And he's convicted by real jurors.
A lot of these elections, especially the last few elections, have been won on the margins.
Right.
And we're going to talk about independent voters in just a moment. There are a lot of them in Florida. Mm-hmm. But what are the independents thinking right now? You're a psychologist. I'm on the fence. I don't know if I'm going to vote for President Biden, let's say, and I'm making this up, or President Trump, whatever the case may be. But, you know, I'm an independent voter and I'm just watching everything. What am I thinking now that one of the potential presidential candidates?
Well, I think some of the independents who are truly independent, they don't lean one way or another to any great degree. They're probably looking at this, and it's a profound negative. I mean, I think that this is going to have a significant effect. A lot of people say it's maybe going to be at the margins. I think it's going to be.
Why do you say it will have a profound effect?
Well, because
by November, this will be ancient history.
Well, I think that it's going to, over time, I think that it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be ancient history. I think it's actually going to be there. There's there when it comes to this thing. And I think that a lot of people are going to just not like it. And it's the way you're perceiving someone. And a lot of people who haven't paid that much attention to politics, they're just not going to like how this feels.
Okay.
And I think it's going to have an effect.
Another big issue this week, President Biden signing an executive order aimed at bringing order to the U.S. border. Now, this is amusing to me, and we'll talk about it. We haven't talked about this at all, so we're talking about it for the first time. They had a bipartisan deal in the Senate earlier this year. Republicans and Democrats got together and said, this is our new comprehensive immigration bill. Right. Okay? It was quashed, never passed. And then the Republican Party complained to the White House that, you know, the president had the power at any time through an executive order and otherwise to close the border or at least control the border. So when Biden does that, which he did this week, they say to him, well, this is a political stunt.
Right.
And I don't understand that.
And what bothers me here is that I'd like to see this as a bipartisan situation.
Absolutely, yes.
I think that Republicans and Democrats should get together like they did in the Senate. I mean, there were a lot of Republicans and Democrats who really worked hard.
They worked a long time on this comprehensive
Be
immigration
fair to
bill.
both sides of the aisle.
Sure.
And they had a very good compromise and significant, overwhelmingly significant bill that was then ditched, okay? And that's what really bothers me about politics today. And people are really frustrated out there because they see something that could be very effective, and then for political reasons, people want to run on this whole issue of the border problem. And that's unfortunate, I think.
Again, what troubles me or what confuses me is they demand action.
Right.
When he does something, they say it's a political stunt.
What
And
what is that old story about you're stealing defeat from the jaws of victory?
Exactly.
Yes.
All right, time now for one of our regular segments, a commentary from Dr. Rossi we call the Rossi Rant.
And today, Frank, I'd like to talk about anxiety and politics, because the American Psychological Association said that anxiety is now the #1 mental health problem in the country. And it makes sense, because anxiety leads to depression, agitation, anger, and a lot of frustration for a lot of people when it comes to politics, okay? So what my thinking is why? And I think that we've covered the answer to this over the last few weeks. We've criticized Democrats for their messaging, which I think is really off in many respects, and the Republican Party for not really seeing the truth. I mean, what is the truth in this conviction? What is the truth out there? And people are angry, they're frustrated. So my suggestion is, how do you deal with this now? And it really comes down to, I think, doing something. Actually, you don't have to run for office, but there's a lot of things you can do that will reduce your own anxiety and be proactive. And that is perhaps join an organization, some type of political action group that's representative of the truth and means something and will mean something to you.
All right, good. Thank you, Doctor. Coming up, how independents in the state of Florida could shake things up when the votes are counted in this state. That's next when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back to Power and Politics. I'm Frank Cipolla, joined by political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi. Almost 1 in 3 registered voters in the Sunshine State are not affiliated with any party, so-called independents, while the number of Democrat and Republican voters are split evenly as well. So how much say will independents have in this year's upcoming presidential election in Florida? Let's talk about the independent mind. We touched on it in the last segment.
Right.
Who are these independents? Because I'm kind of confused. There's so much out there, left and right, that the independent to me is almost like a unicorn. And then there are a lot of them in Florida.
Well, it's because when you say independent, Frank, you think someone is genuinely independent, totally objective in terms of their decision making. But many independents, and I'm not saying this is not a criticism, they lean a little right, they lean a little left. They don't want to be affiliated with a particular party, but nonetheless, they lean in a particular direction. But the problem here is for the two parties is that more and more people seek to be an independent. Mm-hmm. They're not really identifying with the parties for the reasons we just discussed. Mm-hmm. Messaging being poor, the truth being minimized or marginalized. So independents have a major role in what's going to happen here in the state and nationally, going on in this country. They don't do it very well.
They also need to talk, I think, about Trump's conviction. This is a major historical event. But apparently the White House and the advisors to President Biden have said, let's just lay off this. That's wonderful fodder for any candidate against another candidate.
Again, they don't know how to message this. And you're right, they should.
All right, I'm going to touch on a little bit of that in my commentary upcoming. Also making news this week in Florida, a major marijuana dispensary chain has announced the opening of its 200th dispensary nationwide, while also leading a campaign to legalize pot in the state of Florida, which would happen if Amendment 3 on the ballot this November is passed. I've been saying this for a while. I don't know if I'm in the minority or majority. It doesn't matter. Selling marijuana legally and having banks involved, it's a money maker for everybody, including the state government. It adds to the coffers.
I agree with you, Frank, and the American Psychological Association and most research will show you that marijuana is not a gateway drug. That's what is used by the far right. It's not a gateway drug where you use marijuana and then you're going to go to cocaine.
But it's also not good. I mean, this
No.
week, Governor DeSantis was complaining, hey, if they pass this bill, then the smell of marijuana is going to be everywhere. And, you know, I was in a major city up north not too long ago, and I did smell it on the street. It's not for everybody, is what I'm trying to say.
No, it isn't for everybody, but alcohol's not for everybody either. There are a lot of problems out there, but it's not a gateway drug. It should be legalized, and people should make their own decisions about it. And it's not any worse than other things that are legal right now. And it's something that I think being legalized actually is a much more positive approach to this.
I wonder if having that on the ballot as Amendment 3 and then Amendment 4, which would lengthen the time that a woman in the state could get an abortion, benefits each other.
I think so. I think you're going to get a lot of people who believe that, and they're probably going to lean in that direction. That's what I think, especially independents, most Democrats, and I even think quite a few Republicans are going to lean in this direction, yeah.
Okay, be interesting to see. We are on in the city of Jacksonville, the Jacksonville City Council meeting this week to work on plans to build a new stadium for the Jacksonville Jaguars. The council, again, meeting this week, hashing out the details. This is a pet peeve of mine. The NFL football, it makes a ton of money, an absolute ton. Every team shares in that wealth, but when they want to buy a new stadium, and the one in Jacksonville is only 30 years old. It's only 30, and it was just renovated in 2014 and 2015. Why do we need a new stadium? And why did the taxpayers, to the tune of $625 million, along with some money thrown in from the Jacksonville Jaguars, why can't they just pay for it themselves?
Yeah, the psychology of money here.
Right, exactly.
Is what hits
Tell me about the psychology of money.
The psychology
Doctor.
of money where the franchises now across the country, whether it's football or baseball or whatever, are in the billions.
Yes.
So it's in the billions of dollars these owners have that much money, but then we're leaning on the taxpayers. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't make it to me either. I agree with you 100%. I know it's a pet peeve of yours, but for me, I can't really comprehend it. And I think a lot of folks out there are kind of frustrated with the way this is going.
Well, the first stadium they built 30 years ago was $121 million. This is $1.4 billion.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's a ton of money. I don't know why the taxpayer in Jacksonville, if you're watching in Jacksonville, I don't know why you have to pay for some of that.
The taxpayer is paying part of that $1.4 billion. And in the meantime, the owners are making more and more money.
And why can't the owners just take out a loan and pay it back?
You would think.
Okay. See, that's why this show is so logical. All right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we see who is up and who is down this week as we present one of our favorite segments, Sunshine or Showers, when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back. The weather in Florida, especially during the spring and summer months, can be an adventure. Sunshine quickly turns to rain, as we saw this week, and then back to sunshine. So using that as a setup, every week we see who's up and who's down in a segment we call Sunshine or Showers. So, Doctor, who or what is in the sunshine this week for you?
Well, Frank, in Florida, I have Talkspace in the sunshine. It's an organization, a behavioral health organization that provides teletherapy, okay? You can tune in, you know, with your phone, you can on your computer, and you can get a counselor
For mental health issues.
For mental health issues, mostly seniors here in Florida. They've worked out a deal so that Medicare will pay for this in Florida for seniors. I think it's very good. Do I believe it's as good as in-person psychotherapy or counseling? No, but it's good, and it works. It helps people who are in conflict. It helps people think differently about their problems and trying to solve problems. And I think that insurance companies should pay for this, and I think that they will do that now. Medicare has agreed, and I think it's a great idea. It helps people who are alone, who are in conflict, who have anxiety, as we just talked about, who are depressed, and maybe how to get out of these psychological issues.
You got to wonder what took so long to figure that one out.
Yeah, you would think this is a good idea.
All right.
But who do you have this week now?
For the first time on this show since we launched, the person in the sunshine is not a person. It's not an organization. It is a bird. Oh. The flamingo is in the sunshine today. I even have a prop for us here today.
Oh, my goodness.
Here it is. Here is the flamingo. The flamingo, I didn't know, is indigenous to Cuba and Bermuda. It ends up in Florida. It became indigenous to Florida as well. But the numbers have been slowly sinking. But we find out this week that they put one of these monitors on the flamingos. Yeah. And we find out over the last few years, the population of flamingos is going up because of the restoration of the Everglades. So the flamingo, it's not a person, not a man or woman. It's not an
good,
organization.
good.
The Flamingo.
And it's becoming a bigger story. I hear it now that this is becoming a big story down here.
It's
Yeah.
in the sunshine. I'm giving that to you as
Oh,
well.
beautiful, beautiful.
Okay, so with every sunny day, we have some showers. So who is in the showers for you?
Frank, in the showers, I think we have a person that's there for 2 weeks in a row now.
That's never happened as well?
I don't think that's happened here. But we have Senator Rubio, in my view, in the showers. Marco Rubio saying that this conviction in New York was nothing more than what happened in communist Cuba. And I think this is just an awful statement. And he said that basically it's a rigged conviction. But again, he doesn't know who the jurors are. Does he think that the Biden administration knows the jurors? And if they did, which of course is impossible, but if they did, they got to the jurors and they fixed it. It just doesn't make it. Just this is why we talk about messaging and the truth. There's no truth here.
And one of my questions is, if the president had control over the Justice Department, wouldn't he try to prevent the prosecution of his son by that same Justice Department?
That's a good point. But the senator this week, I think, deserves to be in the
That's
showers
2 weeks in
again.
a row for Senator
Yeah,
Rubio.
I'm not happy with what he said. He ought to take a look at himself and look for the truth.
We found out this week that a couple of politicians, prominent politicians in the state, are fans of the show. So they might be watching. Maybe Senator
they're
Rubio
watching.
is watching.
Maybe
Okay,
they're
so
watching.
showers.
Who do you have this week in the showers?
You know, when you good, I'm very good that you asked that question. You know, when you drive around Florida and some parts of the state, people are so very, very nice, especially Southwest Florida, other parts of the state. We find out today that Forbes did a survey of the 25 worst cities to drive in, and two of them are in Florida. Number 10, you want to take a guess?
Yeah, who is that? I know. I have no idea.
You'll probably say Miami, right? Tampa, Florida is number 10 on that Forbes list of worst places to drive in the country.
Really?
In the country. And number 14?
Where's that?
No guess?
I'm Jacksonville.
You are correct, sir.
Oh, really?
Jacksonville is number 14.
Oh, my goodness.
It's the 14th most dangerous city to drive in the nation, according to Forbes magazine. So there you go.
Okay. All right. Well deserved, I
Sunshine,
imagine.
showers,
Okay.
showers,
All
showers. Right. It's time for a break. When we return, a commentary by yours truly titled Let's Be Frank, when Power in Politics continues. Welcome back. Two major events occurred this past week, one firmly rooted in the past, one rooted in the present. First, the verdict that found former President Donald Trump guilty of 34 felony counts. And second, the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion that liberated Europe from the Nazis. First, D-Day. 80 years is a long time. For millennials and zillennials, we might as well be talking about ancient Rome. But for some who might be watching right now, it was the turning point of the war against Hitler. On June 6, 1944, men left boat launches and stormed the beaches of Normandy. Among them, my godfather. He survived. His brother did not. Years later, he visited his brother's gravesite overlooking those once blood-stained beaches. How many men died that day? The man who never returned home to marry his sweetheart, or open that business, or share his knowledge with the world? Heroes, all of them. Those men fought to protect, defend, and preserve democracy. That's why it pains me so to see so many elected officials, average Americans, and yes, even some journalists, cozy up to those who clearly and loudly attack democracy, ridiculing our justice system, praising brutal dictators like Vladimir Putin and Viktor Orban, protesting events in Gaza, and in some cases chanting, "Death to America." Abraham Lincoln said, "America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we are to falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves." Former President Donald Trump may have reason to be angry, but when I see elected officials following his lead, I wonder if their desire to retain their office is more important than their desire to preserve our way of life. Are they so shallow and feckless that they would chase one man's anger in order to advance their status in their party and the nation? Where are we going? I asked several weeks ago what happens to us when, as some say, we burn it all down. I wanted to know what happens then. I also asked for emails from viewers. It was the first week since we launched our show that I did not receive any emails addressing a particular question. I can only imagine what my godfather would say if he saw where we are now. You want to honor those who fought and died on D-Day? You can start by honoring what they preserved for all of us to enjoy. We'll be right back. That's it for this week's edition of Power and Politics. On behalf of my co-host, political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi, and the fine folks working behind the scenes, thanks for joining us. As always, we'd like to know what you think. Visit us at powerandpolitics.tv or email us at info@powerandpolitics.tv. We'll see you again a week from now at this time and on this same station. Have a great week.